I'm going to, Gopi and myself have been working with Kate and a team of about 10 to 12 individuals around for the last year, trying to figure out how we could document the fields that you need for AI and data sets. So data sets are, you have to train your AI before you even launch it. So there's two types of data sets that are involved with AI, being your training data set and your production data set. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But how I got involved in this, Kate and I worked many, many years ago at IBM. I've been with NIST, IEEE, and ISO for quite a few years now, defining the standards that we need to put in place around AI. So I approached Kate because I wanted to put into all the standards that we're writing at IEEE, how you could use SBOMs to document your AI so that you could get conformance or auditability associated with your AI applications. Because I'm sure you've seen the press out there. A lot of AI applications, it's a little bit of the wild, wild west. They're defining their own licensings that are all over the map, and there needs to be a lot more control and ability to audit a piece of software and know sort of where the vulnerabilities are. So SBOMs seemed like a perfect solution that we can start to refer to, you know, an SBOM in these standards that are coming out, as we speak. One of the things when many of us got together, we came up with a huge list of all the fields that should be in an SBOM. But it's not something that people are going to be able to understand overnight, because AI applications, I actually just heard, they're not static, so they're dynamic. And the whole behavior of an AI application can change. The data is constantly changing, and there's a new sort of phase associated with developers that they need to be monitoring the software and understand if it's changed and adapt. So it is bringing a new set of challenges to tool writers because the data itself, as well as the app, can change as it's in production. And there isn't a release type cycle anymore. It's out there, it lives. Hopefully some of these developers are going to put some kind of a time bomb in it, like an expiry date, but that isn't necessarily true right now. They're just going, they have to be pulled from the production versus sort of a new release. But anyway, so one of the things that we did with Gopi and Gene Kemp from University of Illinois, I think it is. We did an exercise of doing card sorting and figuring out what fields from this long list that we came up with would be a good target list for 3.0. So we'll go through that in a bit. We've been, at Ireland and Japan and a number of conferences trying to talk up AI and data sets and get a good feel for what needed to go into the first release. So with that, I want to point out a few things, like SPDX is part of our ecosystem now, but there are other things called data cards that Google model cards. Google, with the software that they build these. Somebody like ChatGPT has got a model card. So some of the industry partners have actually started to document fields that really should be in the SBOM. There needs to be a generic place where you go for the fields, not a company-owned sort of module. IBM has their fact-checking cards. I forget who has data cards, but there's a long list of sort of industries out there that are documenting their metadata. And then there is a set of incident reports, vulnerabilities that are getting documented out there. The one that myself I like to use is the one that the partnership in AI is creating, which is the AIID and the AIVD. But very similar to open source. There was an incident this week, I guess last week. I don't know how many folks have played around with ChatGPT, but ChatGPT can generate code now, or it has been for a while. And there's an incident report that just got reported where ChatGPT was creating cybersecurity code, malicious malware. But what has come out, and it's now in the incident report, it's actually related to an open source library that is got a problem in it. So again, similar to what SBOMs have been doing for traditional software, that will be an advantage and a tool for AI. But again, AI right now is primarily, open source is growing. I will say that. But it is like Microsoft, Google, even IEEE have a vulnerability database that goes with it. So you have to go many places to find out all the security problems with your software right now. So having a tool that maybe scanned all of these and we have one, solution would be a good thing. But tools, to me, are important, extremely important with these AI applications because they're becoming so complex and so large. And then, as I say, the standards, there's so many standards out there. I think, last count, there's like 1,200 standards associated with AI. So understanding sort of all the issues and what is a problem. I will point out with the incident reports, though, it's not just cybersecurity. So an incident report in the AI space can be a cybersecurity one, an ethical one, like you have bias in the data, and I don't know if folks, some of the automated car autopilot models have not been well trained with a diverse set of data, and hence the errors come. They hit people, they kill people. So again, that is in the incident report. So with that, one other observation that as tool writers, people need to be aware of, more and more of the AI. In the past, probably the last 10 years that I've been building, it's been proprietary primarily. But there's a new concept called LLMs. ChatGPT is one of those categories, but it's now becoming a building block. So other software is going to be built on top of that. So understanding, again, your vulnerabilities within a building block is going to be crucial. So here's the long list that we came up, and it was even longer, of all the different things that an SBOM, hopefully, 5 years from now will include. But we're going to start with a shorter list. We went through a sorting exercise to figure out, by using, surveys and talking to people at different things to come up with the shorter list. There's the incident database that I mentioned that we all should become very familiar with. And ideally I come from a tools background, by the way. I was with Red Hat for a lot of years and IBM. But it really, this incident report is bigger than what is currently captured for cybersecurity issues. It actually captures like transparency, black box type things, bias, etc. in the incident report that go into these. So it is far bigger than what traditional software captures for this. That's an example of an incident report. So a couple of use cases. Actually, I was on a call just recently, and somebody pointed out there are a number of types of of models and database. You have your traditional closed or open source ones. I will point out that actually in the last 24 hours, a note from Google just got leaked to say that GPT-4 All-J is an open source model that has been circulating, and it is actually the Google notice or email to the AI team within in their group. It's actually better than BART, which is their proprietary model that they were coming out with. And what the note said was, we really have to start watching open source because they're actually jumping farther ahead than some of the industries. So that's cool to see, but we do need to figure out how people have to document these models and data sources. And then you have in the bottom right, I think that's your closed source. So something like, I don't know, Tesla's autopilot model is closed. Nobody can see sort of the innards of it. But there are two different flavors of whether your code is closed or your model is closed. So you can have a combination of one of them's being open and one of them is being closed. So we're going to have to bring that concept into our SBOMs as we go forward. Again, these are just types of cybersecurity issues that we're seeing. And with the mobile, so in 2.3, we actually worked with Kate and the SPDX team to get the core things that an AI application would need. So they're actually already there. Some of them got reworded to build time, et cetera, but they're already in 2.3. So as an AI developer, I can start to build SBOMs. But where it gets fun and interesting is the new ones that are coming into 3.0. And those are things like, with an AI application, you have this concept of hyperparameters. ChatGPT in particular, I think, has 3 billion hyperparameter options that you can do. So again, the scale associated with AI applications and what gets documented in an SBOM is something that would love to get more feedback on. The other one that got added, there's something, so you have to pre-process your data before you put it into an AI BOM application or a model application. So you have to cleanse your data. So there's now a field to document, all the different techniques that you used to get your data ready for an AI application. The next one is the model explainability aspect. And again, model cards have this in their fields, and we felt it was needed for an SBOM. So a couple of examples. So one of the things I've been doing is to see if the information is actually out there that people could grab. And then as looking at an SBOM, would I be able to come in and audit that software and be able to say it's got a high risk, low risk, etc. And so this one is a world data set that has all the finances and the interest rates, etc., etc. It's an open source, at least it's the Canadian version of this is open source. I'm not sure all around the world it is. But you can see right now that I've filled in sort of what are some of the core components that would go into an SBOM. But there's very, very little information about build time, release time, etc. And to me, or in ISO or IEEE standards term, it means the transparency of this data set is not very, it's low. So if I'm going to be using this data set, that's a flag to me that there, maybe I shouldn't use it. But again, it's just to get a feel for how an SBOM could be used. Again, some of the new data set fields that we have is, how did you collect your data? So again, going back to the chat GDP example, they have just taken every data that's publicly available on the internet. So they would have to flag that that's how they got their data in the SBOM. They would have to indicate the size. I did some work with GM, and they gave me 2 billion rows of data for everything that you would want to know about a car and its performance, etc. So again, they would fill in that information. Again, I currently working in IEEE in their, I guess it's biometrics type standards. And so with all of this, there's data noise. So you have to be able to know it. You also need to know sensors, the hardware that's actually tied to your AI application. You need to understand your known biases, sensitivity of your personal data, anonymous methods, confidential level. So how confident you're going to have to define that your predictions of your AI are going to work or not. And then the data availability, whether it's public, private, etc. So those are some of the new fields coming in 3.0, and that we'll start to see propagated. Really, nobody that I have been able to find that builds AI applications currently is building SBOMs. So this will also be an awareness and try and get people doing this activity. Again, using the data set, so I took a look at GPT-3, which is a model that is what ChatGPT uses. And with the new data fields that we're proposing, all of them are red because they're not in the model card, they're not in any of their documentation, they're not in any of their white papers. So again, me being an auditor at IEEE, I would look at that and say, oh my God, it's too risky. No way am I going to use that code. Again, we talked about the world data set. There's a little bit more on the GPT-3 example. One thing that we're going to have to start working with the license folks is there's new licenses associated with models like OpenAI. So if you're not familiar with ChatGPT, you use an API to get at this stuff. But Microsoft owns all the rights behind the scenes to this, and it's documented in this license. So whether it's a custom license, I'm not sure, or one with exception, but this is something that we're going to have to get clearer as we're documenting AI discussions. Again, within the AI world, there's a lot about how you trained your data, what are the biases of your data that need to be defined in the SBOM. And then we're still, as I say, there's a ton of sort of more models and more exposure. Again, AI itself is relatively complex, and to be able to do an SBOM for an AI or the data itself will need more sort of fine-tuning. But I will flag, because I think some folks believe that AI and data are tied together and could be defined. But as things are happening out there, people are using data for multiple models, and they use the same thing. Models use multiple different data sets, so we have to separate them and package them separate so that as they roll out and start to get used by other folks, that they are able to know that one component by itself and all the vulnerabilities. So again, I don't know if there's any questions, but I wanted to just expose that AI is different. So I come from a compiler traditional code, but this it changes as life goes on, and so we're going to have to figure out how we're going to document that in an SBOM. So
one question, then we'll take a picture, and then move on. Perfect.
So my question is about, so in any large-scale language model, right, or any AI model, you have an algorithm that does continuous learning, but it does learning based on certain data set. So how do we account for when we find a data set was poisoned or corrupted and you want to take it out in an SBOM format? So you need to carry the information about data used so you can revert back and take out the anomaly.
Right. So that's a challenge. Yes. The problem is, as a developer, knowing sort of when you take it back, it typically right now is being triggered by a pretty severe vulnerability out there. I think folks, Tesla, the cars, etc., when sort of a bad accident happens, they're pulling it off the market, and like the autopilot right now, I think, is off the market, or the version that was out there. We need a simpler way. Myself, I was with a startup company where we actually, as software or AI models were being produced out in the world, we have a monitoring system, and if any of the metrics go awry, like some of these chat bots go bias or whatever the words you want to use, we then signal to a developer that should be considered to be actually pulled off the market. So it's really this lifelong learning and monitoring that is crucial for AI applications. Do you want to add?
Yeah. Also, the dataset profile field has a few fields called known biases. So as they get documented, and depending on if you want to use that particular AI system for your purpose, it helps guide your decision. And as things keep getting logged there, you have a way of ascertaining if that's something that's going to affect you or not. For instance, if you want to use a model that was trained on data set that has not seen enough demography, which is a known bias there, then you can decide not to use it. And a lot of fields in there will help. The idea is to get those data in there so that it helps you guide the decisions, both before putting it into your system and as you continue to use the system. Yeah.
Shall we take the picture?
Yeah. I think we're getting our picture taken now.